A song came on this week, and something in your chest tightened before you even understood why. Maybe your eyes stung a little. Maybe you turned the volume down fast, because it felt embarrassing to be moved that much by 4 minutes of sound. Or maybe you walked into a room, and before a single word was spoken, you already knew something was wrong. You felt the tension the way other people feel temperature. And somewhere along the way, someone told you that you were too sensitive, too deep, too much. Today I'm going to show you 10 behaviors that made you question yourself for years, and by the end of this, you're going to understand something that changes how you see your entire life. Because those 10 things aren't symptoms. They're a signature. Let me ask you something most people never ask themselves out loud. Have you ever looked around at your family, your coworkers, your friends, and felt a quiet, aching sense that you're tuned to a different frequency? Not better, not worse, just different. Like everyone else is listening to the same station, and you're picking up a signal nobody else can hear. You've probably wondered why conversations feel hollow, why the things that energize other people drain you completely, why you feel most like yourself when you're finally alone inside your own mind. Here's what I need you to know before we go any further. That feeling isn't a flaw. It isn't loneliness, it isn't depression, and it isn't you being difficult. It's data. And today, we're going to read that data together. Number 1. You don't just understand what other people feel. You feel it in your body. Someone tells you a painful story and your stomach drops. Someone across the room is anxious and your shoulders climb toward your ears for no reason you can name. There's real neuroscience underneath this. In the 1990s, researchers in Parma, Italy discovered neurons that fire the same way whether you perform an action or simply watch someone else perform it. We now call this the mirror system. And in human brain imaging, psychologist Bianca Acevedo found something remarkable. In highly sensitive people, those mirror regions, along with the insula, the part of the brain that maps your internal bodily state, light up significantly more when they see emotion on another person's face. You're not imagining other people's pain. You're literally simulating it. Number 2. You recharge alone, and not because you dislike people. Some of the people you love genuinely light you up. But extended social exposure doesn't just tire you out. It hollows you out. There's a difference between being tired and feeling emptied, and you know that difference intimately. Psychologist Elaine Aron built an entire body of research around this, calling it sensory processing sensitivity, a trait she estimates appears in roughly 20% of the population and in over 100 other species. Its defining feature isn't shyness. It's depth of processing. Your brain runs expensive operations constantly, reading micro-expressions, tracking tone shifts, cross-referencing everything said against everything you already know about that person. That's not socializing. That's labor. And solitude isn't you withdrawing from the world. It's you coming back online. Number 3. You are constitutionally incapable of staying shallow. Someone gives you an answer, and instead of feeling satisfied, you feel a door opening. Why? And then why again? Not because you're anxious, but because your mind won't accept incomplete information. Psychologists John Cacioppo and Richard Petty gave this a name decades ago: need for cognition, the tendency to seek out and actually enjoy effortful thinking. People at the high end of that scale don't just think more, they think more accurately. They can hold complexity without collapsing it into something simple and wrong. And here's what I want you to sit with. What people called overthinking was deep processing. It's the engine behind every real insight you've ever had. The cost is exhaustion. The gift is that you see what everyone else walks straight past. Number 4. You cannot be bribed into caring. Somebody whose opinion mattered once looked at you and said the word unmotivated. Passive. So much potential, if only you'd apply yourself. And part of you believed them. Here's what was actually happening. Before you commit to anything, your system runs a quiet calculation beneath conscious awareness. Does this matter? Is this worth my finite energy? Does this align with what I actually value? And if the answer is no, you simply will not engage. Decades of self-determination theory research from Edward Deci and Richard Ryan show that people driven by strong internal values are far less responsive to external rewards than average. Schools, workplaces, and families are built for people who respond to outside pressure. When you didn't, they called it a problem. They mistook your standards for your ceiling. Number 5. You read people almost instantly, and you've never been able to explain how. You know who's hurting and hiding it. You know who's performing a confidence they don't feel. You know when someone's words and their energy are telling two entirely different stories. This isn't mystical. It's empathic accuracy, built on the enormous amount of nonverbal information your brain gathers without asking your permission. But I want to be honest about the cost, because nobody warns you about it. When you can see beneath someone's surface, you lose the ability to pretend you can't. You carry information about people they never consciously gave you. You feel a closeness that's completely one-sided. And then you wonder why real intimacy feels so rare. It's rare because you're looking for someone who can see you the way you see everyone. Number 6. When everything falls apart, you go quiet. Not because you don't feel it. You often feel it more sharply than the people visibly falling apart around you. But something in you steps back from the edge and says, not yet. Process first. React later, if at all. People have called this cold, distant, unfeeling. What they were actually watching is one of the rarest psychological capacities there is. Researchers call it distress tolerance, the ability to sit inside intense emotion without being controlled by it. Most people have to build this deliberately over years, through therapy, through breath work, through practice. For you, it's been the factory setting for as long as you can remember. That isn't coldness. That's survival that quietly turned into strength. Number 7. You've always felt older than your age. You've sat in a room full of your own peers and felt, without any arrogance, like you were watching children. Like the things everyone found urgent simply didn't reach you the same way. Researchers studying autobiographical memory have found that some people naturally organize their memories around meaning instead of chronology. They don't remember what happened first and second. They remember how each experience changed the way they think. Your past isn't a photo album. It's a psychological textbook. Every disappointment became information. Every mistake became instruction. That's why you seem older, and it isn't because you've lived longer. It's because you extracted more understanding from the years you've already lived, and that creates its own specific kind of isolation. Number 8. Small talk doesn't bore you. It's physically uncomfortable, like wearing clothes that don't fit, like speaking a language that has no words for what you actually want to say. Weather, weekend plans, empty pleasantries. It feels like standing at the edge of something real and choosing to talk about nothing instead. Psychologist Arthur Aaron spent his career studying how closeness is actually created between strangers, and his famous work showed something simple and devastating. Escalating, personal, honest questions build intimacy in 45 minutes that small talk never builds in 45 years. So you don't need more people in your life. You've never needed that. You need one conversation that goes somewhere real, and those are far rarer than they should be. Number 9. You're at peace in silence, in a way that makes other people visibly uncomfortable. Not the silence of having nothing to say, but the silence of not needing to fill every moment with noise to prove you're present. You can sit beside someone you love for 20 minutes saying nothing and feel completely connected. Creativity researchers keep finding the same pattern. Moments of low external stimulation produce the highest levels of original thought. When the outside gets quieter, the inside gets louder, which is exactly why your best ideas arrive on long walks and late drives and at 2 in the morning. Most people fill silence because silence is where they'd have to hear themselves. You've already made peace with what lives in yours. That's a kind of courage that doesn't look like courage from the outside. Number 10, and I want to be careful how I say this. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely. Lonely is an ache, a reaching towards something that isn't there. What you feel is different. It's more like standing slightly outside every room you walk into. Participating, yes. Present, yes. But one part of you is always watching, always aware that the fit isn't quite right. Psychiatrist Irvin Yalom described this as existential isolation, and he was clear that it isn't a disorder. It's the natural consequence of a clearly defined inner world. The more precisely formed you are, the harder it becomes to find perfect resonance in another person. You're not broken because you've never fully belonged. Precision, by definition, doesn't fit everywhere. And there's one more thing that quietly separates you. Something so subtle, most people never notice it in themselves. You're unusually comfortable changing your mind. That sounds unremarkable, because everyone claims to be open-minded. But psychology draws a hard line between claiming it and demonstrating it when your beliefs are actually challenged. Most brains treat contradicting evidence as a threat to identity. We call it confirmation bias, And Solomon Ash showed us how far it goes, when ordinary people gave answers they knew were wrong simply because everyone else in the room did. For you, pretending to agree is more uncomfortable than standing alone. When better evidence appears, you don't feel attacked. You feel progress. That takes emotional security, intellectual humility, and the rare ability to separate who you are from what you currently believe. Now, here's the part one don't want you to miss. Every single trait we just walked through has been used against you. Your solitude was called antisocial. Your depth was called overthinking. Your selectivity was called laziness. Your steadiness was called coldness. Your sensitivity was called weakness. And the cruelest part is that the people who said those things weren't always wrong about what they saw. They were wrong about what it meant. Because there is no personality without trade-offs. The same wiring that makes you exceptionally perceptive is what makes you feel misunderstood. The same empathy that lets you love people deeply is what makes emotional pain sit heavier in your body. What you were seeing was never a flaw in the design. It was the design. And none of these 10 things guarantee you success. They don't guarantee happiness. They don't make you better than anyone. What they give you is something more valuable than all of that. They give you awareness. And awareness is where every real transformation starts. Because once you understand your own mind, you stop fighting it. You stop apologizing for needing solitude, for asking harder questions, for refusing shallow answers, for caring about meaning more than appearances. You start building a life that fits the way you actually think. You choose relationships that value honesty over performance. You choose work that feeds your curiosity. And you stop measuring your worth by how closely you resemble the average person, because the average person was never supposed to be your destination. So before you go, do one thing for me in the comments. Don't write a long story. Just give me a number. Which of these 10 traits have you carried the longest? Sometimes a single number is enough to remind a stranger they're not the only one who's ever felt this way. And if you want to keep going deeper, subscribe, because the next conversation is about the thing almost nobody talks about. What happens to a sensitive mind when it spends years around someone who benefits from it staying quiet? Because here's the truth I'll leave you with. You spent your whole life asking, why am I different? Maybe the better question, the one that actually changes something, is what has this difference been trying to teach me all along?